I grew up with a mother who was ill. In fact, most of the memories that I have of my wonderful mother are of her being ill with a constant stream of different health conditions.
Yes, there might be cancer or heart disease or diabetes that may run in the family, but our genes are not our destiny. We have control.
I, I was reading about inflammation and I was like, this is the key. This is really the key. If we can keep and tamp down on this low rate inflammation, we are good to go. Inflammation is the underlying cause of most illness, disease, faster aging, and weight gain.
Hey Keto Camper, I am so excited to interview Dr. Lori Shemek right here on the Keto Camp podcast on the Keto Camp YouTube channel. In this conversation, you're going to learn all about 3 different types of inflammation. We have acute, chronic, and then a new term coined fat flammation, which is actually the title of my guest, Dr. Lori's book. You're going to learn about the mitochondria, the cell membrane, and how that all works, the process called cell danger response, super important to understand. You're also going to understand which keto fats help heal the body and reduce inflammation, and then the opposite, which keto fats actually increase inflammation. We also get into the importance of magnesium, especially for you because you're following a ketogenic approach. And then we discover Dr. Lori's favorite benefits of intermittent fasting and all of the lab work markers that you must request from your doctor, from your insurance. So let's get right into this conversation with Dr. Lori Shemek.
Dr. Lori is a well-known pioneer in creating global awareness of low-level inflammation and how it is the underlying cause of most illnesses, disease, faster aging, and weight gain. Dr. Lori has been sending out the message about inflammation long before it was a buzzword, which is true. Dr. Lori is an award-winning, best-selling author of How to Fight Fat Flammation, The Ketogenic Key, The Beginner's Guide to Intermittent Fasting, and Fire Up Your Fat Burn. I'm going to put a link for all of her books down below. I recommend you go purchase them all. So without further ado, here is Dr. Lori. Hey, Dr. Lori.
Hey, Ben, how are you? How is everybody? Good to be here. Thank you.
They're excited. I'm excited personally because we get to geek out together. Thank you for coming on the show.
All of us together.
Yeah, all of us together. So yeah, you have been teaching inflammation before it was a buzzword, before it was on Time magazine. Why did you decide to get into inflammation and all things out there? What is your background story regarding that?
Well, I grew up with a mother who was ill. In fact, most of the memories that I have of my wonderful mother are of her being ill with a constant stream of different health conditions. And, it was really a sad situation. I was the eldest. I had 2 younger brothers. We had no father. He was missing from the picture. So my mother's choices, however, led her down this unhealthy path. And I remember often just walking into her room, her dark room, seeing her laying there suffering. And I was a young girl. I didn't really, I knew intuitively, though, even as a young child, that she could make different choices. And so my mother's choices were not healthy. She smoked a pack and a half of cigarettes a day. She was verging on obesity. Obesity ran on my mother's side of the family. And she had a horrible diet of, the sugar refined carbohydrate diet, coffee, cake, and coffee for breakfast. And she was under a lot of chronic stress. So she had no husband, she had nobody to lean on, and her family was living out of state. So you can imagine the kind of chronic stress she was living under daily. And we had very little money. And so a lot of the nurturing and the mothering responsibilities, like cooking, were left to me. And so, I remember just making eggs because that was my go-to know-how dish for my brothers. And to this day, they don't like eggs, believe it or not. And so, but it was a very sad situation. She wasn't available emotionally as a parent could be if they were feeling better. And but we took care of her, and she was good sometimes, but mostly 90% of the time, no. And very sadly, she died at the young age of 36, leaving behind
Wow.
3 young children with literally nowhere to go. And so, it was after she died, I made it my mission and my passion. I knew what I wanted to do when I was older. I knew I wanted to help people. I was always interested in health anyway, probably why I paid attention to her diet and her health in the first place. And so I went into the helping profession. I went in, I got my doctorate in psychology. I counseled families with family outreach, an organization that helps at-risk families. And I noticed that when I changed their food, when I literally gave them a grocery list, right? And they use these foods, their health changed, their mindset changed, their motivation changed, and their children as well. So they became healthier. Food has a huge impact upon our mental well-being. And so that lasted a long time. I became vice president of the organization. And then I decided at a late age to go back to school. And so I went back. I wanted to create my own company, and I wanted to help people with their health like I wasn't able to really do before, right? I was helping with their mental health, but not their physical health. And so I went back, became a nutritionist, got my certification in life coaching, and created my own company, HealthWorks. And so that's what I've been doing ever since.
What a story. How old were you when your mom passed away?
17, just turned 17. And my
Wow.
youngest brother was 9. And it was really sad because we were all separated. They found my father. And so my younger brother, the middle brother, went to go live with him. And my youngest brother, Lance, went to go live with a friend of the family. They eventually adopted him. And I went to live on a ranch in Texas with my grandparents, which was definitely a culture shock for me. So yeah, it was just, but we were never to live together again. And it's just, and so I underscore the word choice when we're talking about health all the time, because I saw the choices that my mother made. And many people feel like her. They feel like they just don't have any choice in life, that this is the hand they've been dealt. And that is far from the truth. In fact, you and I both know about the science of epigenetics, where we have 80% choice. We can change our genes, our gene expression, positive gene expression, 80%. That's huge. My mother didn't know that. And so had I known that, I would have helped her with it. But this is what my goal is, my mission is, to help people understand that they do have choice, that, it's sometimes transformation isn't overnight, and it takes a while to see the genetic expression, but it's happening on the inside.
Yeah, well said.
Thank you.
Oh, there's an echo. 1 second. Let me exit this echo. Do you hear an echo too, or no?
Mm-mm.
Okay, it's just me. That's fine. Well said about the epigenetics. I wholeheartedly agree. And that should be so empowering to those watching or listening right now, because yes, there might be cancer or heart disease or diabetes that may run in the family,
Right.
but our genes are not our destiny. We have control, and epigenetics is the control. So genes are like that light switch we could turn on and turn off. So you decided to get into the health space because of your pain to purpose message, which is beautiful. We have a lot in common. What led you down the road of inflammation? Why did you decide to dive into that path?
It's interesting. When I went back to school to become a nutritionist, I was reading about inflammation, and I was like, this is the key. This is really the key. If we can keep and tamp down on this low grade inflammation, we are good to go. And for a long time, we're good to go. And we can prevent so many diseases, so much ill health, weight gain, you name it. And so I can talk about inflammation and the different types if you want. But suffice it to say, it is extremely beneficial to know that inflammation is the underlying cause of most illness, disease, faster aging, and weight gain.
Yeah, I'd love for you to distinguish the difference between the acute inflammation, which you call loud inflammation, and then
Right.
the silent inflammation. What's the difference
Right.
between those two?
Well, so we have actually three types of inflammation. I kind of coined the term the third type, which I call fatflammation, right? It's inflamed fat cells. But the first type, which is very important for people to know, and it's all an immune response. All inflammation is an immune response. So if let's, every day, if we didn't have this acute inflammation, which Ben just said, I use the term loud inflammation because we know it's there, right? We know it's there because it's not comfortable. It's painful. It hurts. It stings. It's that black and blue sprained ankle, that cut on your finger, that terrible head cold. It's all the things that we think are bad for us. But in fact, this is a very good thing, because without this type of inflammation, we're sitting ducks. We would not be alive. And so let's take that cut on the finger. When you cut your finger, an enormous amount of inflammatory molecules are released. And soldiers, if you will, rush to the site of the wound. They repair the wound heals, the soldiers go away, the inflammation goes away, and all is well. That's acute inflammation, and that is necessary. Now, the next type of inflammation is called silent inflammation or chronic inflammation. And its very name suggests danger, right? Because it's silent. You don't know it's there. In fact, 75% of our country has silent inflammation and they don't even know it. And so it's the core, as I mentioned, the core underlying cause of most illness, disease, faster aging, and weight gain. And we're looking at diseases like heart disease, obesity, type 2 diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis, Alzheimer's disease, osteoporosis, you name it, inflammation is the underlying cause of it. And that's why it's so important to know about this type of inflammation, because you really don't know it's there. It's silent until it rears its ugly head with a symptom, right? And you can look at silent inflammation like having a sore on the inside of your body that never heals. And that's the unfortunate part about silent inflammation, unless you intervene and you live an anti-inflammatory life.
And the conventional approach is to look at that symptom and treat that without acknowledging that there was a cause for that symptom.
Well said, exactly. And that's the conundrum we're in this day and age, because the medical community, they're really good at fixing acute issues, infections, and most of us have had something happen that we're blessed to have our medical community. But unfortunately, with with this chronic inflammation, these inflammatory diseases that appear, they just put the Band-Aid on.
So then you have the third type of inflammation, which is called fatflammation. You have a whole book about it. Explain that.
Yes, my book, How to Fight Fatflammation. And it's a tongue twister for some people, so I'm impressed, Ben. So fat cell inflammation is silent inflammation of the fat cells. And what happens is that the types of foods most Americans are eating are creating a body that is producing inflammatory molecules, okay? And when the fat cell is getting bloated, and with glucose, for example, and fat and more, it's expanding. And the fat cell is not happy. And when the fat cell is not happy, it begins to act as if it's sick or infected and begins to emit a trickle of inflammatory molecules. And this has a metabolic effect that actually slows down the metabolism, causing weight gain for you. And that weight gain, however, isn't in and of itself. It actually affects the rest of the body. So wherever you may be vulnerable, with health conditions or whatnot, It may set up there in your joints. It's still inflammation circulating throughout the body. And that's what most people are not aware of. And so, for a good example of what people are eating, we can talk about refined vegetable oils, seed oils, if you want later,
Yeah.
which I think is so important. It's one of the key components of optimizing your health. When they're ingesting these oils, for example, a compound called arachidonic acid is created, and that arachidonic acid is stored within the fat cell. And again, it's like a double whammy. If you're eating these types of foods and you're eating an excess amount of calories and you're eating other anti-inflammatory foods, this is causing, again, the fat cell to really kick up and spew out those inflammatory molecules. We don't want that. So what we want to do is we want healthy fat cells. And the way to do that is by ensuring that, which would be the same as for any other cell in your body, to resolve the inflammation in the body.
So the big question is, how do we resolve the inflammation in the body? What are some of the key foods for keto to help with that?
Yeah, so the key foods with keto, so when you are eating keto, which we can talk about, it's an anti-inflammatory diet, and why I wrote a book about it. I just released a book called The Ketogenic Key, and it's got a lot, of course it would, my book, on inflammation in there, but it's foods that are going to stop the inflammation, like the omega-3s that you find, from the fish that you're eating. Wild fatty fish is a really good example. Any seafood really is really good in omega-3s. This really halts the inflammatory process. And then you want to repair the tissue damage done. And many people do not realize that their cells are being damaged with this inflammation, particularly the cellular membrane. Okay. And again, we'll go back to that fat we were talking about earlier, but suffice it to say, healthy foods that are, high in polyphenols, all these cruciferous veggies are really great to resolving this inflammation. Berries are high in these polyphenols. Green tea, the EGCG in the green tea is excellent in repairing cellular health, and stopping this inflammation once and for all. So it's literally making, the keto choices that we have are all, I would say 95% of them are anti-inflammatory.
Yeah, I'm aligned with that totally. The polyphenols, the green leafy vegetables, the right, clean, stable fats like the fish, the seafood. Now, going back to the vegetable oils and the cell membrane and the mitochondria, what's the dynamic there between consuming these dirty, unstable fats on keto, like the soybean, the canola, the cottonseed, these unstable fats that are in a lot of keto products? They're all over Whole Foods. They're all over even in these healthy grocery stores. What is happening to the cell at the membrane level when we consume this?
Yeah, so our cell membrane is a very thin membrane, but it's a very important component of our optimal health. The health of it determines the health of you, essentially. So it's allowing nutrients to come in and out, and it's made up, the cell membrane, of fat. So that's why saturated fat's really good for you. But the fats Ben and I are talking about right now are not. Okay, so we're looking at corn oil, vegetable oil, soy oil. What am I missing? Canola oil.
Safflower, canola, cottonseed,
All
these
these
industrial
oils,
seed oils.
yeah, they're highly processed, highly refined. The body does not know what to do with them, right? When you eat anything that's processed, it's kind of like, okay, well, we'll put you here. And then you're just expressing genetically, negatively, of course, that type of food. But the cell membrane then, because it's made of fat, uses the fats that you're eating, okay? And those fats, like, let's just take vegetable oil, for example, or canola oil, which you wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole, right, Ben? I mean, you would not, if you knew how this was made. Canola oil smells to high heaven. And so they have to deodorize it. They have to deodorize all of them, actually. And that's why we really don't want to eat these types of fats. So anyway, these fats then, because we are what we eat, right? These become the cell membrane, your cell membrane. And that then promotes a cell membrane that becomes, the matrix of the cell is affected as well, becomes a bit rigid, and the cell membrane itself becomes rigid. So what does that mean? That means you're not getting the nutrients that you need to optimize your cellular health.
So it creates inflammation at the cell membrane. And now all of a sudden, these 30,000 receptor sites that we have on every cell can't hear the communication from our hormones, from the nutrients that we're eating. I read a study, Dr. Lori, from Professor Brian Peskin, MIT researcher who I had on my podcast. It's called the Iowa study, and it showed when they removed these inflammatory fats from the participants, because they were consuming it to begin with, but when they removed it, it took 132 days before their cell membrane went back to a healthy inflammatory marker.
That
5
is
months.
Astounding. That is astounding. Yeah, but remember what I said early on, that it's not like your health transformation is not it's not overnight for most people. Sometimes it is, right? But the more choices, healthier choices you make, the faster it goes. So if you just stop that one thing, if you just take away anything from this today, it would be to stop using refined oils. And a lot of people don't know, like sugar, that they're in almost every processed packaged food product out there. And that's the sad part. So you have to, and that's the other thing I would love for people to take away, is to really read labels. It's so important. Like if you think when, for example, you buy something at Whole Foods, that you would get a healthy choice, right? You know, a prepared food there. And they're all full of the soy. Recent research just came out showing that soy oil is affecting our brain health. And guess what? Soy oil is used in a lot of these cereals, breakfast cereals, snacks, packaged processed foods, you name it.
Yeah, you're so right. We have to read the label. The marketing is brilliant. We could see it's keto, it's gluten-free, it's non-GMO, but then we got to look at the actual ingredients. And you're right, the hot food bar in Whole Foods and the olive bar, if they even have that now with COVID, but when they did have it, loaded with these inflammatory fats. So what's the relationship here between the cell membrane and the mitochondria within the cell, which is that battery, the engine of our body, of our cells? So what's the relationship there? And if you could speak about the cell danger response, that would be fantastic.
Absolutely. So, you know, when the mitochondria is a sensing organelle, and for those of you that don't know what the mitochondria is, it's a tiny little, we have millions of them in our body, and mostly in our heart and muscles, but they're everywhere. And they are the most crucial organelle that we have, because they generate ATP, which is the energy that the cell needs to survive and what keeps us alive, right? So we need that energy from the mitochondria. When the mitochondria is not functioning optimally, remember I was talking about inside the cell, the matrix gets a little stiff and it's not healthy. The nutrients aren't getting to the organelles within the cell.
Hey, I want to take a second here to interrupt the interview just to say thank you for watching it up until this point. If you can, if you're getting any value from this interview with Dr. Lori, smash the thumbs up button and hit the subscribe button with that bell if you're not subscribed already. Also, check out the episode sponsors, Purity Coffee and Pure Form. Purity Coffee is my favorite coffee in the world, organic, mold-free coffee, which could actually double your ketone production. And then Pure Form is the best alternative to fish oil. Fish oil is not healthy for the body, and this is a great plant-based omega. You can check out both of those links down below in the show notes. All right, let's get back to this interview with Dr. Lori.
And the mitochondria is one of those organelles that requires magnesium, for example, to create ATP. Well, it's not getting the ATP that it needs. And so it's not in the amount that it should be getting it. So what we need to do is stop eating these types of foods that are causing inflammation, that are ruining the cell membrane, right? And then we want to really ensure that we have enough magnesium. And we can talk about that, Ben, if you want, later. But just remember this, that magnesium is extremely crucial to your optimal health and weight, for example. So the mitochondria, and is part of what is called the cell danger response. And this is an important component to inflammation that happens that a lot of people are not aware of. So when the mitochondria, say there's something going on with the cell somewhere in the body, the mitochondria starts saying, whoa, 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 we're in distress here, and starts sending out signals of distress. And this sets up an inflammatory response, if you will, within the cell. And if the cell is not really functioning healthfully anyway, in via poor diet or for poor food choices, then it's a double whammy as well. So all the cells come together to fight this inflammation, but it's just causing more inflammation. And until we intervene and we stop this cell danger response, is how the cell sees itself, and the brain. So the brain gets the message that, oh my gosh, there's stuff going on in this cell. And until we intervene and make healthier choices, until the brain gets that message, everything's okay, then that inflammation continues and it becomes chronic. And then we have autoimmune issues going on, and much more inflammatory negative health issues. So until we intervene and stop that cell danger response, or CDR as it's referred to, then we're going to be, we're going to be feeling negative health effects.
Yeah, well said. Well, a great explanation of that. I don't think we had anybody on my show, we're almost 200 episodes in, explain the cell danger response, especially as great as you did it. So thank you for explaining that. So the first thing is to have the awareness that there's something interfering with your cells, interfering with the body. Awareness. Number two is remove the interference. And number three, the body will heal. Will it heal overnight? Probably not. Will it heal over time? Absolutely. The body is incredible. So you mentioned magnesium. Why is it important to increase your magnesium on a low carb, high fat diet like keto? And what are your favorite ways to get in magnesium?
Yeah, that's one of the things that, one of the nutrients that people lose, because when you eat low carb, you're emitting a lot of fluids, you're releasing a lot of fluid. And with that fluid comes a lot of those really precious minerals like magnesium and potassium and sodium, for example. And so I always insist that people, with their doctor's approval, take magnesium as a supplement, because it is, as I mentioned, if you look at your mitochondria as the source of optimal health for you, you will be good to go the rest of your life. If you look at the cell membrane, if you focus 90% on that instead of the weight loss and the athletic ability and the smooth skin, etc. If you focus more on your cellular health with your food choices, your dietary choices, your lifestyle choices, then it all falls into place. And all of that is just a byproduct, naturally.
Well said. You're so right. Take care of the cell, especially the cell membrane, and everything else takes care of itself. What are your favorite sources of magnesium?
So I take two different types. I take a chelated form. It's a patented form, two patented forms actually. It's by Bluebonnet. I have no affiliation with any of these companies. And then the reason I take the chelated form is because it's very bioavailable. And then I take magnesium threonate, which is a form that readily passes the blood-brain barrier, which other types of magnesium cannot do. And so it promotes better brain health, as you age, and just overall, it's more bioavailable. There are many types, and you can even use a supplement that has all 9 different types of magnesium in there. So, which, is a great way to do it, but you're not getting as much as you would if you just settled on two.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I use the 3 and 8 often, and I kind of go back and
Yeah,
forth between 3 and 8 and malates. I like those too.
malate's
Um,
excellent. Right.
yeah, that was Angelica in the Keto Camp Academy who asked that question. So thank you,
Oh, how
Angelica,
much
for that. Yeah.
yeah. Hi, Angelica. Yeah, so it depends on really what's going on with you, but say you're very overweight, which you're probably not, but just for general purposes, if you're very overweight, you're going to need more. If you're on medications, you're going to need more. If you have foggy thinking, you're going to need more. So in those areas, I would say 600 milligrams are excellent. Stay away from magnesium oxide unless you are constipated. Then it's the only way you'd want to use oxide because it's not really bioavailable anywhere else in the body. So 400 to 600 for most people is good. I take 600 a day.
Yeah, me too. Sometimes I'll go up to 800, but for some people that
Yeah.
might give them disaster pants. So be
Right.
careful.
Yeah. And that's the other thing. If you find that you have disaster pants, just reduce the dosage by 1.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, let's transition here because a lot of alignment with your work and my work, because we both teach keto, obviously, but we also believe that ketosis is not a diet; it's a metabolic state. And
Right.
when we look at it from that lens, it's a great tool, but it's not the only tool. Meaning, we love to be in ketosis, but we don't believe we should be in ketosis all the time. So, what are your thoughts on? I call it keto flexing. You could call it carb cycling. But what are your thoughts on getting in and out of ketosis, especially for women?
Yeah, I think, for everybody, I think it's a great thing. And as you talk about, Ben, it's really, it's a great way to teach your body to be metabolically flexible. And that's what we want. That is how we actually evolved, is being metabolically flexible. So it's a really great way and so I know your listeners know, viewers know about your keto flexing. But for those that may not know, it's just, amping up your carb intake. I like it 2 days a week. Could be, once every 2 weeks. It just depends on what works for you. But
But do
what
you
this,
do that? Do you do that right from the beginning, or do you get them strict first, kind of get into ketosis for a while, and then you start
yeah,
doing that? How do you
yeah,
teach it?
exactly that. So I prefer people, especially if they have weight to lose, right?
Hmm.
I prefer that they stay strict on stay in ketosis for a while until the weight starts falling off. Then the body's better able to handle the carbohydrate anyway, and then I think you're good to go. Otherwise, you're not quite prepared. It's kind of like jumping into the keto diet without preparing yourself, or intermittent fasting without preparing yourself. So we can talk more about that too. But suffice it to say that it's easy to get back into ketosis once you've been there before, once your body is used to it, and it works very well. And for women, it's great because women we're fine-tuned, we're more fine-tuned hormonally, and so reproductive wise, you name it. So that's carbohydrates sometimes are even better in terms of sustaining us, and for everybody, having carbohydrates every so often makes us happy. So
Yes, it does.
keeps us on the program, right?
Yeah, I agree with that. And also, I mean, we also need some insulin to make that T4 to T3 hormonal conversion. So if we're not
Thyroid,
getting
right.
that, yeah, the thyroid.
And
So
also we need carbohydrates to build muscle, and we can talk about that as well. So carbohydrates are necessary.
I love it. A lot of alignment there. What about fasting, intermittent fasting? Do you currently practice intermittent fasting? What are some of your favorite benefits from fasting?
Yeah. In fact, in my book, The Ketogenic Key, which I have right here.
There we go. By the way, we're going to put links for all of Dr. Lori's books and her social media down below. If you're watching on YouTube, it's down below. And if you're listening on the podcast, it's in the notes of the podcast.
Thank you. Yeah, so in my book, I talk about, it's called The Ketogenic Key because ketosis, I should have named it the ketosis key, because it really is about ketosis, right? So if you don't want to do the ketogenic diet, then intermittent fasting will provide ketosis for you. And there are other options for you outside of just having to go down to 50 grams or 25 grams of carbs a day, right? So intermittent fasting, I practice it. I do 14 to 16 hours a day, and longer sometimes on the weekends. So the weekends are better for me because, I go grocery shopping, and I'm like, I have to walk my dog. So I get, all this, I walk my dog anyway, but it's just easier for some reason to do it on the weekends longer for me. But yeah, so intermittent fasting to me is an excellent way to optimize your cellular health, right? We have autophagy that is excellent. We talk about cell cleanup. We talk about getting rid of dead and dying cells, which causes inflammation. I mean, the whole gamut is really corrected. Really, intermittent fasting is like a reset for your body. So if you have insulin resistance, or you are obese, or you have type 2 diabetes, intermittent fasting is a fantastic way to do it. If you are type 2, though, with a doctor's approval is best.
Yeah, absolutely. I love what you shared about there's two ways to get into ketosis. You could eat a whole bunch of fat and some carbs, or you could just practice fasting.
Yeah.
Your body's going to be forced to burn your own body fat.
Yeah.
I like ketosis key, but the ketogenic key is also pretty good.
Thank you.
So let's talk a little bit about some, I call them fasting crutches. So somebody who is doing fasting, but their ghrelin, their hunger hormone, is just making noise. Like, for example, I know I'm ready to eat right now. I've been fasting all day. It's about almost 4 p.m. in the afternoon. I've worked out today. I did a live stream. Yeah. High five. So my stomach has been growling the last 45 minutes, actually, since this interview. So I know my body is ready to eat. But typically,
that was that echo you heard earlier.
it was actually my own stomach. But typically, my hunger, when I do feel it, it goes away in 5 to 10 minutes. And if it lasts longer, I know I'm ready to eat. So what are some examples you can give? Maybe some crutches for those who want to extend their fast, but they're getting those hunger pangs.
Well, so for example, today I even posted about this on Instagram. It was a tip. So if you are hungry while you fast, having green tea is an excellent way to break the hunger, right? Because it tamps down on the hunger hormone ghrelin, which is, sometimes when we're fasting, we get hungry and we want to go through, the 14, 16 hours, 24 hours or whatever. And so this green tea really is beneficial in this case because of the nutrient EGCG.
Yeah, so many benefits to green tea. I mean, it also activates autophagy too, right?
It's amazing. Yeah, yep. So does coffee as well, but there's still some skepticism on whether it does or not to this day. But one day we'll find out. Yeah.
I think it will. The reason there's skepticism is because for some people, coffee raises glucose, and if glucose goes up, autophagy goes down. But for some people, it doesn't raise glucose, and then it could increase the autophagy. At least that's what I think is going on with the coffee.
Yeah, and it's and there are other foods, and so if you though get enough food, if you're fasting, and you must ensure that you get enough food for your to sustain you. And that's a really important point because a lot of people they're afraid to overeat. They're afraid that they're going to gain weight. But if you're doing keto, which I highly recommend doing keto to whatever degree you want, and then fasting. I really ultimately foundationally recommend intermittent fasting at the very least. But I myself practice a varied form of keto. They call it. Some people call a carnivore diet carnivore-ish if they're not completely carnivore.
Yeah.
So I'm keto carbish.
Keto carbish, got it. Yeah, I like that.
So yeah, it's there are things you can do. Also, remember too when you're fasting, you're activating AMPK, which is going to really help you lose weight and provide energy for you. It's really fasting is fantastic.
Yeah,
getting
it's
rid of those
it's
catalytic cells.
mhm. It's my favorite tool in the shed. It's not the only
Yeah,
tool, but it is my favorite
right.
tool. But I've seen a lot of
Well
people fall in
said.
love with fasting and they don't feast enough. So there has to be a balance there because our
Right,
cells are hardwired for the feasting and the fasting. Have you seen the
right.
same?
Yes, absolutely. I see that a lot. And it's, and the other thing I've seen is just the opposite, where people they gorge after they fast. And this is
Hmm.
generally in the beginning when they're not used to being food depleted, deprived, if you will.
Right.
And it goes away generally for most people when fasting becomes a way of life for you. But just a word of caution there to be careful with that.
I would love for you to share some of your favorite labs. We know that looking at the number on the scale is not going to be a determining factor to whether or not keto and fasting is working for you. There's much more than that. There's the non-scale victories, of course, how you feel, your energy levels, your
Yeah.
sleep, but also lab work. Like, what are some lab work? What are your favorite inflammatory markers for those doing keto to get done and get done on a frequent basis to see if their approach is working for them?
Fantastic question. So the first one is vitamin D, because if you have a low vitamin D level, then you generally probably have inflammation going on, right? The next one is, and by the way, I like it to be up at 70 or higher is where I
Yeah.
would like that to be. And then your CRP, C-reactive protein value is very important. The lower, the better. One or two is ideal if you can get there. But suffice it to say that you need to get that checked, because if you don't get it checked, just like your vitamin D, you'll live your life not knowing whether you could have just made one small change in your life, like having green tea, and your inflammatory markers would go down. So, just a little heads up there. And
Yeah.
then,
Great.
the other one is fasting insulin is very important. Fasting glucose is pretty okay. It's okay up there, but we're more concerned with A1C. That's a better barometer of what's going on with your glucose, or if you wear a glucose patch
Yeah,
constantly.
CGM. Yeah, I've
Yeah.
worn one for a couple months. It's such great data.
Did you learn a lot about it yourself,
Oh my
huh?
gosh, so much.
You-
It's
Yeah.
even like the healthiest keto foods didn't agree with me for some reason.
Okay.
So I could see that with that monitor.
Yeah, and I had a lady on my podcast show. She's a physician, and she was talking about how when she drank coffee with that monitor, it would show her glucose through the roof that you were referring to earlier. And that it happens to a lot of people. So you just never know unless you do these things, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So we have CRP, we have vitamin D, we have fasting insulin. Fasting glucose is just good. And then we also want our triglyceride level and our HDL. Okay, so those are two important markers. HDL is there's a ratio that you get. If it's 1.2, you're good with the division of triglycerides and HDL. So when you have that really great ratio, then you're doing the right thing. If your HDL is high, your triglyceride level is low, you're doing well.
Those are awesome markers. So important. And there's so many that you could do as well, but those
Yeah.
give you a great baseline. I did 40 days of carnivore earlier this summer just because I wanted to do it and see what it did for my body. So I did a whole bunch of lab work, all of those included. My C-reactive protein was 1.1 day one of carnivore, which is pretty good. And then after 40 days of eating nothing but animal fat, saturated fat, cholesterol, my C-reactive protein went down to zero point 0.5.
What?
It,
That's
yeah,
unheard of.
yeah, from eating nothing
That
but
is
meat.
unheard of. That's amazing.
Isn't that
And
interesting?
that is I've never heard of that low before. Generally, there's always inflammation going on in the body when the cell metabolizes food. For example, the mitochondria produces reactive oxygen species, et cetera, within the cell. There's always inflammation happening, but that was great for you because that's all it was showing on
Hmm.
your end, you know?
Yeah, exactly. It was super interesting, and a lot of other things happened too. Like my homocysteine dropped. My cholesterol went up, but all my inflammatory markers
Right.
went down. So that is the inflammation prevails, the oxidative stress prevails, not your total cholesterol. I want everybody to
Thank you.
understand that.
Yes.
Yeah,
Outside of, I don't even mention cholesterol as a marker for inflammation. Triglyceride
right.
levels, HDL, unless your total cholesterol is skyrocketing, you may have the genetic hypercholesteremia, which
Right.
is familial. And yeah, so yeah, that's amazing. Carnivore.
So yeah, carnivore to the rescue, at least short term, not long
Yeah,
term, just like keto, just like vegan. I think it's all great short term if you do it the right
right.
way. So could you just share with the audience where is the best place to find your books, your website, and your podcast, and just where are the best places to find your work?
Thank you. Yes, you can find me at my website is drlorishemek.com. And I have all sorts of, my blog is there. There's a lot of information, years of information, of health information for you. Also, you can find my books. I have 4 of them, and they're all on Amazon. You can find them, and you can also find it on my website as well. And I'm on Twitter as Lori Shemek, Lori, and I'm on Instagram as Dr. Lori Shemek. On Facebook is Dr. Lori Shemek. And what am I missing, Ben?
Your podcast.
Oh, and my podcast. Thank you. Yes, and if you'd like to learn about fat loss and optimizing health, it's called This Podcast Burns Fat, and it's on every platform.
It's a great name. It's a great name.
Thank
Last
you.
question. Actually, before I get to the last question, your Twitter is fantastic. I said it earlier, but if you're on Twitter, you got to go follow Dr. Lori here because I'm just always blown away by your Twitter posts. So thank you for the consistent effort on Twitter.
Well, thank you. Yeah, consistency is king.
It is king. Last question here as we wrap this up. It's been a great interview.
Thank you. I
Is
agree.
let's say somebody is doing keto, they've been doing keto, they've been doing intermittent fasting, they've been doing keto flexing, but they're just not getting the results they want. They see their friends getting results, they see their coworkers getting results, and they're starting to think something is wrong with them. What would be, and they want to give up, they want to quit on keto, they want to quit on these tools that we've shared here today. What would be your words of wisdom for this person?
Well, when you say they're not getting results, meaning weight loss, for
Not
example?
just weight loss, they just don't feel good.
Ah, okay. In that case, I would say don't do it, right? They may be somebody who needs carbohydrates, more carbohydrates, because we're all genetically unique. And so they could do a higher carb uh, version of keto, if you will.
Which is
And
still low carb in
yeah,
standard American diet
thank
terms.
you. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you think the average American ingests 300 grams of carbs a day, it's astounding,
Oh my
right?
gosh, it's
So you
crazy.
drop
Yeah.
that down to 100, then there you go. And people with 100 grams of carbs a day still have good cellular health. Now it
Yeah.
becomes more optimized the lower the carb generally, but not always because we all hail from different regions in the world. Our families do. So
That's true. Great advice. I love that because you're telling them to change it up. Mix it up. Try something else. I've done the same thing where I've taken somebody. This keto just hasn't been working for them. Hey, let's put you in a paleo, 100 grams, 150
yeah, very good.
and then back to keto, and then it works much better when we do that. So great
Yeah.
advice.
And
There
also
was
the intermittent fasting, if they're not intermittent fasting, sometimes that's the thing they need to do, but
yeah,
slowly ease into it, like, delaying breakfast an hour for a week or a few
exactly.
days, etc. Yeah.
I love that. I have a quick question for somebody, Christy, who just posted this question. If you could see it here, could the ingredients in heavy whipping cream be causing my inflammation? It has carrageenan, disodium phosphate. My knees really hurt when I have it in my coffee. What do you think about that, Dr. Lori?
I do. That's it. That's probably what's causing it. And you also may have a food sensitivity to dairy, I hate to say, as well. But those ingredients are definitely inflammatory. And if you can find it without it, that would be best.
Yeah, I agree. And Christine, I would say try having some ghee. Ghee removes the
Yeah.
dairy, the lactose. That could be a good switch for Christine here.
Yeah. Be perfect. Yeah. Good question, Christine.
Yeah. Dr. Lori, I want to acknowledge you for your many, many years of your work in the keto space, in the health space, in the inflammatory space. I really have learned a lot from this episode, and I continue to learn a lot from your work. I am so grateful that you show up and you speak from the heart, and you've got a great attitude and great energy to when you do speak. And I'm grateful that we connected. I am grateful that my audience got to see your work. And I encourage all of the keto campers to go get your books, to go listen to your podcast, check out your website. And I'm just grateful. And I thank you for today's podcast.
Oh, the feeling is mutual. Thank you. And thank you, Ben, for giving me the opportunity to come on here. I love what you do. Ben is the best, isn't he?
Thank you so much, Dr. Lori.
Thank you. It's been really fun.
Hey, thank you so much for watching that entire interview with Dr. Lori. Smash the thumbs up button if you got any value from this episode. Share it with a friend. And if you haven't subscribed to the Keto Camp YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button. You might be wondering, okay, I understand a little bit about the mitochondria, the cell membrane, and ketosis. I want to take your knowledge a little bit deeper. I have a quick video that I developed on how the ketogenic diet works at the cellular level. You're going to learn exactly how to burn fat versus sugar, and these are advanced keto strategies. So if you hit that video right there, it'll play for you, and I'll see you in the next video.